Hello, my name is Garland Favorito. You may know my work from Voter GA, but tonight I'd like to make a personal plea to you to take please just about 10 minutes and let me suggest a plan on how we, the people of Georgia, can regain control of our government. I think that the key comes to the office of the Secretary of State. The office has 5 functions: securities monitoring, corporate registrations, archives management, licensing of professionals, and most importantly, conducting elections. Joseph Stalin once was credited with saying, "He who casts the votes controls nothing, but he who counts the votes controls everything." Folks, we must conduct auditable elections here in Georgia. We need to open the ballot so any of these good candidates who want to run for office can run, and we need a Secretary of State who is impartial and independent of the lobbyists who have controlled and influenced public policy so greatly during the last few years. Our current secretary is not independent and he's not going to accomplish those things. But please let me give you, please give me actually about 5 minutes to give you some information to explain why I say that. This year, Governor Perdue appointed former State Senator Brian Kemp as Secretary of State after Karen Handel resigned. Now, Brian seems like a nice guy, but he immediately said that I'm going to continue the tradition, the honorable tradition, of Kathy Cox, Lewis Matthey, and Karen Handel. Well, let me give you just 1 minute of history on the Secretary of State's office. Kathy Cox purchased $54 million of voting equipment that did not have an independent audit trail of each vote cast. I can say that because the state's expert witness acknowledged it under oath. That law was 212301B of the 2001 Georgia Election Code. Now, Lewis Massey was her former boss, and he was the lobbyist for the voting machine vendor. He profited from that sale. Karen Handel said she was going to fix the problem, eloquently explained the problems, and said she would fix it expeditiously. However, she completely reversed her opinion after taking, we don't know actually how many thousands and thousands of dollars she took from the voting machine vendor lobbyists and individuals connected to that lobbyist, Massey and Bowers. Now, my question, though, is that an honorable tradition that you want your Secretary of State to continue? I don't think so. As a candidate, Secretary Kemp wrote that he would set up a blue ribbon commission, an election commission, to look at some of the issues that we would like to get passed. But he never did that. However, it only took him a month to set up his business commission, which is a great way to get business contacts and raise money for his campaign. Now, that supposedly, the purpose of that was to aid in the transition from the Handel administration. However, there was only one person on the business commission that had former Secretary of State experience that could aid in that transition, and that person was none other than Lewis Massey, the man who profited from the unverifiable voting equipment sale to Georgia as the lobbyist for the voting machine vendor. Now let's move on to ballot access. In early February, 2 bills were introduced to reduce the petitioning requirements in Georgia so candidates can run for office. 3 weeks later, Secretary Kemp was asked about those bills by Jason Pye in a podcast interview. Secretary Kemp responded that I have not even looked at those bills. Well, let me show you the bill that he didn't look at. This is one of them, HB 1141. It's only 1 page. It's only 1 page. There is 2 sentences, boilerplate sentences on the 2nd page. He had 3 weeks to look at that. He didn't even look at them. He didn't want to look at them. He didn't want to read them. Is that what we're paying for in a Secretary of State? 4 more bills were introduced in the last session. 2 of them would have removed the petitioning requirements totally in Georgia. They were bipartisan bills. They would have removed them just like Florida did successfully in 1999. Brian Kemp opposed them all. None of them ever got a hearing. Now let's move to auditable elections. At the February Georgia Christian Alliance debate, Secretary Kemp said that if the legislature introduced a bill to replace the unverifiable voting equipment we have, he said, I would be ready to lead the charge. Well, 2 weeks later, the legislature did exactly that. They introduced the bill and Brian Kemp refused to support it. Now, he's used a lot of excuses for that in the debate. He said that, well, the effective date was too soon, but he could have had the bill amended to change the date. He said that it cost too much, but he never did a cost-benefit analysis of how much we could have saved by having one optical scanner in a precinct instead of 20 voting machines. Finally, he just said that, well, the legislature didn't pass the bill anyway. Well, that is because Brian Kemp opposed the bill. The chairman told me personally that that is why they did not give that bill a hearing, and I can't blame the chairman for that. So, Secretary Kemp has also gone on to say, in a completely different vein, he says that the machines that we have are the envy of a lot of other states. But Free Congress Foundation rated us last nationally in system reliability and recount preparedness. Secretary Kemp said, I don't know why we would get rid of something that's working as well as they are now. But my question is, how would we know that if they can't be independently audited? And Secretary Kemp has repeatedly said that our machines are safe, secure, and trustworthy. Well, I've been in the business for many decades. I don't even want to tell you how long. And I've never seen any business implement a mission-critical system like this that cannot be independently audited. So let me give you a few examples of the problems that we have had in the last 8 years or so since these machines have been audited. Okay, in 2002, 3,256 test votes were included in the live election results in Cobb County. In 2005, also in Cobb, 285 totally blank voted ballots were recorded in a $1 billion SPOS referendum that were only passed by 114 votes. There were the 285 blank ballots were cast, even though the referendum was the only thing on the entire election. It was the only contest. So why would there be blank ballots cast for that? In 2008, 947 test votes were recorded in the live election results in Lowndes County. A voting machine technician was wrongly blamed for that when she was not even present for the accumulation, reconciliation, or the certification of those results. Not present for them and not responsible for them. In 2008, Douglas County officials oversaw the manipulation of all 25,000 election day ballots. They were put in a spreadsheet, all the votes for those ballots, and then that spreadsheet was used to enter the results into the county server until they got those results and they were satisfied with them. That's according to the Inspector General's own report. You might remember in 2009, Fulton County attempted to recount the mayoral races in Atlanta and in Roswell. Well, they could only reprint the previous unverifiable results for the electronic votes, and on the absentee ballots, they just rescanned the results again, so if there was an error in the tabulator, that same error would have been present in the recount. If they had hand recounted them, it would have taken no longer to do that since there was only one race involved. In the Douglas and Lowndes County cases, Secretary Kemp protected the election officials who were involved, and they will be counting our votes again in November. Now, I spent 100 hours of personal time on the Lowndes County case. I presented evidence that the voting machine technician down there was framed. I filed a 70-count complaint against for improper investigation against the state election board's deputy attorney general and improper investigation of those two cases. But Secretary Kemp's acting inspector general refused to investigate my complaint. The Georgia General Assembly filed articles of impeachment against Secretary Kemp's inspector general. You need to be aware of that. He chose to protect her. When he was asked about it, he said, and I quote, "The filing of this resolution is a complete waste of the General Assembly's time and Georgia's taxpayers' money." Well, we didn't spend any money to do that, and there wasn't much time involved either. But for these reasons, this is why we absolutely must have a new Secretary of State. We must have it now, and we must have a person who's independent and trustworthy. Secretary Kemp is a Republican. The Democrats have offered us as an alternative Georgiana Sinkfield. Georgiana got into the race at the last minute without an understanding of the issues that were involved in this office. If you don't believe that, watch the Atlanta Press Club debate and decide for yourself. In her June Atlanta Progressive News interview, she stated that, "I don't know of anything wrong with the current machines. Now we have uniformity." Well, that's true. We now have uniform, unverifiable voting statewide. And that's because she voted for SB 414 in 2002. That was the bill that disenfranchised us by allowing the equipment to be implemented without the independent audit trail that was required in the previous bill. When APN asked her if she supported the bill in the last session that would have fixed this problem, she replied, "I don't remember it." She claims to be for removing the petitioning requirements for candidates, but she spent 28 years in the legislature and never submitted a bill to do that. So to claim it now seems very disingenuous to me. So what are our options? The Republicans are going to run the Secretary of State's office for the benefit of the Republicans, and the Democrats are going to run the office for the benefit of the Democrats. Folks, we have got to have an independent, impartial Secretary of State. And that happens to be the third candidate on the ballot. That's David Chastain. He is independent of the lobbyists and independent of the political power brokers that have controlled our policy and our public policy and made these candidates offer such ridiculous solutions to these problems and just ignore our problems altogether. David has worked for years to remove the ballot petitioning requirements in Georgia. He produced evidence in the Cobb Splice. He supported bills we needed in the last session, and he brought attention to our issues in the debates. Folks, if we get a new supportive Secretary of State, we have a great chance to pass new laws that can open the ballot for all these good candidates to run for office, that can reconfigure the state election board to make it impartial, that can move us toward auditable voting equipment again. Folks, that is, I believe, is the key. If we start with the office of the Secretary of State, we can then expand and move on to the legislature and force them to have new ethics bills and make them independent of the lobbyist money as well. Folks, I'm asking you again, if you'll vote for David Chastain, please not only vote for him, but tell your friends about him. And if there's any documents, folks, that you want to explain more in detail about what I've said tonight, it's up on the VoterGA website. But I come to you tonight personally with a personal plea. Let's save Georgia now. Folks, thank you so much for your patience for listening. God bless you, and good night.